At the theater, certain problems were arising. The per capita sales were suspiciously down. Ted Kirby noted the discrepancy. He investigated and noticed that some certain employees must have been stealing somehow. He narrowed the potential suspects down to whoever was working the shifts they were short. The per capita sales was the average each customer was spending on concessions items. Ted called for a meeting in which he insisted that everyone attend. One would have to see him personally if they couldn't make it. Tom was one who would not be available for it. When the meeting assembled, he called everyone into the auditorium. He began by stating that he was aware of the misbehaving going on. "I'm just gonna start by saying that I know about your reselling cups and pocketing the money. I know about your stealing courtesy cups. And all of this is enough to piss me off. So are the guilty parties gonna come forth, or not?" After a pause, nobody answered. "Then I guess I'll have to call you out. Joel and Steve. I know it's you guys. Goodbye. You are not to come by and visit any longer. And you can tell Tom not to come back either, since he took part in it too." The two guys there arose and just left the building. Ted caught his breath after they left and got choked up. "Sorry I had to get like that. I know those guys were your friends, but you realize that I have a job to do to maintain integrity. I don't want to have to worry about someone, when we collect for Will Rogers and those drives, taking from those donations and other things." Ted mentioned that sooner or later he would find out when there is stealing. He also mentioned that phone privileges would be temporarily suspended. Some of the staff later said they disagreed with WHT. Ted did, like Amy. Others, like Nora, understood his reasoning. This method of termination would be seen as barely legal or ethical in the long run. Ken, despite the shock, managed to complete his courses on top. He's finished his finals with AS, and pulled off a decent sales presentation despite worrying how he would compare with the other students who seemed to have a more natural talent for sales of both goods and services. Ken got scheduled as the very last one. He pretended to sell his book bag or portfolio to another student, a young man with dark hair, who volunteered at the last minute to fill in. At the end, Dr. Trevino, his teacher, assumed the class that no one got less than a B for their presentations. Everyone there passed, but as to how many C's there were was another story, he said. Ken was just glad to be done. He waited for a while for his final grades and everything. When they arrived, he was shocked to see A's in every one of his classes. This was the only time in his life he got straight A's as a full-time student. This was the proudest he had ever been of himself academically. His search for girl had to continue as Roseanne seemed to be always busy. He kept his ad going, and got a few more responses, from a girl named Lisa and another named Lauren. He got to talk to Lauren first and learned that she was originally from Michigan. She was 23, turning 24 in November. She described the situation of looking for guys as challenging, realizing it's not as easy as going up to a guy and asking, "Will you go out with me?" Ken could identify. They arranged to meet at the Chad's Ford Tavern, not too far from where they both lived. When he met her, she was wearing a pantsuit, had long dark hair, and she was another smoker. He got to know her as a particularly average girl, with an interest in movies and fancy dining. He shared with her some of the events he had experienced in life recently, surrounding his search for a girl, his classes, and his car. They mostly communicated at the bar, not at a table directly facing each other. He mentioned his Catholic faith. When he asked about hers, he learned that religiously she didn't practice any faith. She found the Pennsylvania area life similar to her Michigan life. Once she asked to use the ladies' room, coming out to request they cut things short. "Ken," she said after coming out, "I'm not feeling very good. Do you mind if we end things here? And I'll let you know if I want to get together again?" "That's fine," Ken said. With that they just said goodnight and headed out. He called her a few days later to ask if she wanted to get together again for a particular night. "No," she said. "Okay," Ken said. "Can I call you again?" "Actually," she said on the phone, "I don't think we should be going out." "All right," said Ken, after a long quiet pause. After that he hung up. He really didn't detect much chemistry between the two of them anyway. Chapter: The Summer Turnover. After the nasty, ugly termination of the 3 employees for stealing, a new group of hirees were about to join the theater staff. It consisted of young people, the names of whom included Stacy, Megan, Adam, Natasha, and Connie. Within time, Ken gradually got familiar with them. Ken looked at the schedule with the new people on it, and said, "Okay, I've met all these people. I still haven't met this Connie yet." Above, an AI-generated image of Connie. At NN. Constance McIntosh was a petite girl with dirty blonde hair, shoulder length, and originally from the southern Midwest. Born in Champaign, Illinois on January 17, 1974. One day, by the way, before the young girl Ken remembered, Marie Elizabeth, back in the 70s. And yes, Connie would be one of those who learned of Ken's birthday memory. She was only 7 months older than Nicole, and 4 years Ken's junior. She had worked at a theater in the summer of '91, called the Plaza in King of Prussia, and it is the summer of 1992 in Concordville, when she starts there, in early June. She speaks with a soft, breathy, sophisticated accent, a little prim and proper, but someone you may identify as being on the spectrum, and just high-functioning, on the gifted end, even though she may not have been diagnosed as such. When she started, she didn't know any of the workers at Concordville, except Rachel, who started later, that same summer, around the same time as Patty and Emily. She avoided associating with big groups of workers who gathered together and talked during downtime. She spent a lot of her break time sitting and reading, writing, or drawing art, or playing solitaire. However, she got along well with people on an individual basis and spoke as often as she could. She seemed like one of those cases of selective mutism. The managers and staff were as hospitable as possible with her, including Ken. When she first started, Dave Francis was shocked at how rigorously she cleaned the back of the concession stand. While showing her where the ice was, Ken was designated to help train and show her the ropes and things they did. Ken showed her the relatively time-consuming process of filling a large bucket with several small scoops of ice. "Well, I know what's not going to be my favorite job," she said after he showed her this, using the words going to with clear diction, as opposed to gonna. John Schwartz got to know her and found her to be quiet and, like Ken, seemingly lonely. When commenting on her, John said to Ken, "Guthrie, I really think this girl is someone you go well with." "I'm serious." John had always been someone Ken could easily talk to about his likes and dislikes, and John respected them, including his interest in Nicole. As time went on, Ken and Connie got to talking to each other, and she became somewhat of a confidant to Ken. TJ was detecting chemistry, but Ken tried to downplay that. Connie may ask Ken what he was looking to do, and what his goals were in life besides working at the movies. "I guess I just first need to finish this degree at NCC Tech, figure out what to do with it, and hopefully, also, be a family man and a father." So your goal is to be a daddy?" she asked. "If I can," he answered. "That's good. Me, I don't know. I guess my goal is to be something more than someone people just want to pat on the head." Connie also said, "I'm sure you can be more." The movie theater was getting films which included Patriot Games, Sister Act, and Unlawful Entry. Ken was continuing to rely on his personal ad to meet potential mates. He would gradually improve and make his description more detailed with each update. He got a response from a girl named Terry, a bank teller who was 21, living at home. He also enrolled in one college course which was economics too, to catch up with his requirements. He also got to meet a girl named Robin Getty, a blonde who was 18 years old, and from Conowingo, Maryland. They met at the same Pizza Hut. Previous dates met with Ken at this time during the daytime. She had a rather high voice and was attending community college. She also had diabetes, and would sometimes rely on insulin to get by at times. She agreed that Ken could call her again for a possible second date. She simply had to make sure she was off from her job at a local retail mom and pop business. He called her days later, and she was available to get together again for dinner and a movie. They met up again for a second date to have dinner at Cheek Eyes and see the movie Buffy the Vampire Slayer. She seemed to enjoy the movie, and she could converse about the events in her life. She told the story of a guy who was hounding her on the phone that she didn't know. She could be a badass and speak up for herself, cussing the guy out. Ken made sure he showed as much chivalry as possible by holding his car door open for her and letting her enter places first. The summer saw the theater hosting some activities for employees, including a softball game and a bowling outing. Ken served as the pitcher in a softball game against the Tri-County workers. He did pretty good, barely avoiding getting hit in the face by one hit, and almost missing a catch directly from the air. At one point, Pat Rowland from Tri-County suggested, "Ken, come